that is running all over the meetings. Karakia, Whakatau, you get all the up and back to home, you get the here, people just here, Ngā Kaupapa, Tai, Mihi, Ake, Ara, Ti Makura, Ti Tiho, Ti Puka, Tiho, Puki, Tihe, Maori. And welcome to the meeting, Mayors, you can't councillor, CE staff, and all those sort of in their home. All present, so I can declare the meeting open. Calling for apologies, and I have an apology to Phil Major. Was setting Major's leaving. It's not too yet, sir. It is. I'll be apology. Okay, really departure.
And apology mentioned
Okay, me great. If those were apologies. Then moving on to conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest on today's agenda? And then covered for deputations, petitions, none. Before we go into the next item, let's just we've got a moment of silence for Michelle for NEMA. Who passed away last week. She was a valuable member of CDEM and the role of NEMA. She'll be sorely missed by colleagues, friends, and family. So, just then for a slide. Minutes of the last meeting. On page 20 of your agenda, the members of FFC related to the minutes of that meeting, which was held on the 29th of May 2025. Will be your no seat. This is simple. That is the board items for disclosure and was one. And 25, 26 per win program jobs. So this has been a work in progress that we've sort of discussed with the joint committee as we've been developing. It's now been developed. It's an honest review of their key asking for endorsement of the work program. Noting that there will be things that come in that will reprioritise what we on the new things that come in even the national processes that we have to attend to. We've got a program there. It's shown in two ways. There's the work for this financial year, and then there's the work over the next 5 years. So one thing I'd like to highlight to you all is the items which I've got to really highlight around the key projects that we're looking at doing through this year. We've kicked off and actually had the roadshow pieces already. There's sort of two pieces to this, either public engagement that we're doing with Tsunami programs, where we're going out to 100 or and over the other parts of the region as requested, but also a piece around making sure that our emergency managers through the region has would understand the business of the place. So just today we sort of did a presentation to emergency managers also what risk means and how this works, and then over the next week while I'm sure what our planning looks like in Canterbury will go in place. And all those management is a simple way to understand. The strategic work framework comes out of the KPMG material. It's a key piece of planning to place the foundation for the emergency management plan. The Tsunami response and recovery plan review. It's really important today in the record, particularly while and then for example, private is doing a lot of work in the Tsunami space for Christchurch residents, so we're going to make sure that we're wider prepared. And then I'm not going to read through all of those, but you can see them there. One of the things that we are looking for though is sponsorship through the Coordinating Executive Group, and my intent was to go and spend some time trying to champion some project sponsors. Please. We did have Mary Richardson's name technically forward for a couple. I haven't actually come and checked if she's comfortable yet, so we'll do that. But yeah, happy to take any questions on that program. I think those people get booked into the question this show and job.
Just a question, James, relates to a conversation we had before. I've talked to some people or some influence around the community that have a view of what they think makes, given who they have talked to in some hierarchy. And I'm getting from them the picture is different to what I understand is coming out of our public engagement and what's being told to the community. So there just needs to be a little bit of a disconnect somewhere, and it's a wee bit of a concern that those people of influence are having a view and we others have a different view. Any idea how we might just get a wee bit more media around where we think the science sits today?
I think if you hear anyone who's sort of overdoing what people understand it to be, please let me know, and we'll see if we can work out a way of actually going and seeing the actually science of the scientists. One of the things that I've noted is that we've seen President Radler's video, the peaks as the earthquake of the South Island. And I think people are interested in those large peaks in the Canterbury Basin, being how much Canterbury is actually going to move. Yeah, that's only showing the energy released. It's not going to go 2 miles in the sky. So yeah, if you are talking to people and they're thinking about that video, that's the energy of how much it's moving. But yeah, if you do get problems with people,
I'm just thinking in relation to the communications that we have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification. And just to be sorry, we've got a mic, so if you need to speak about using the mic, otherwise we're listening in one here. So, James, there's a lot of work as that program going in, which is great. Get that done. Resources, do you have enough, or will you be asking for the LTT process?
I think as it stands, we've got some investors in our office, and we're just actively working with HR processes or regional new structures that will be employing people very soon. From the LTP perspective, or annual plan perspective, we will be coming to the next joint committee with some recommendations around our lifeline coordination space, or at least for that. But from a sort of goods and services perspective, we've got enough to at least get these projects well and truly underway, or some of them, the higher orders.
Any further questions for James?
I guess a follow-up to that, and whilst we don't know what will ultimately end up in the Mihi and bill, how do you believe we are placed, given where that bill and government are taking? Do we have staffing, resource and ability, or is there requiring a significant change? So it's just something to ponder.
Yeah. But certainly, if the bill goes through the way that we have seen, and I can talk about this during the NEMA update, it does indicate that we need to have a much greater investment. That's talking $80 million over 5 years across the whole of the country in the bill. And yes, we will have to have a good, robust conversation as to how we could do that.
So just looking at our work program and wondering where we would position, and I know that there will be plenty of other entities that are not positioned as well as we are. So what's the relationship between where we're positioned now programs and the expectation of government? Are we in the same boat as others, or are we sort of on the curve?
I think our program is probably okay to see this. We need a boost in the community development space going forward. And might be sort of in recovery, will need a boost in that space as well. But as it stands at the moment, I think we're pretty program is very comprehensive and on those two areas. Yeah.
We have a recommendation now of that we received the Canterbury Self-Defence Management Group work program and to endorse the Canterbury program. Can we move Correct. Marie? The discussion. Most board about petition item. There. 8.2. Management legislated.
Just with these ones, I might mention go through all the bios of the year. And really know the process that we've got in section 27 from local controllers, and then the section 30 local recovery managers. We've had requests from Whakakapi District Council and Whakakapi District Council for some controls there, Stephen Johnson, Paul Taylor, and Aaron Leeds. There's some appointments for recovery managers for the formative in like Bora, in the Colton, the I know that the council sort of got these forward and looking forward to these appointments being made. And can you take any questions on that?
Questions very straightforward. You've seen Mode and Dan, the discussion. Put the motion all first piece of over there. Slide is 8.3, which is the second financial report.
So the attached year fourth quarter this year, all intents and purposes, this final year's I had last year, just hadn't been audited yet on the rating and installing a service, just like that 71 dollar mark. So we're above the business. Yeah. Well, there wasn't 6 months. So I understand the reading this space, maybe to those positions not filled previously. Now that the group work program is in place, I can see us contracting some work out and using some service. And then more for this group, there is a little next year's budget and actually locked in for it. Going through the environment Canterbury process and through the budget, but this will be eligible to take the question.
These that were on schools last financial year, we want, but then we also the particular reserve as we talked about. Is that what treated? So it has currently gone into the reserve, so it's there for to either treat it as the reserve or committee to the should we start to go into join on that for the program that we're with on? Questions, comments? The recommendation there that we received the 24 or 25 financial year report and adopt 25-26 budget. First in John. Open 38. Discussion. Motion all about this item. Very. It's time 8.4. February advisory panel, but it will be. Yeah, what you see, Richard.
Good, and the purpose of this item is to give an update on the advisory panel and on the purpose of this item is to give an update on the recovery advisory panel that we convened, and I'm delighted to have beside me Jim Palmer, who I'm sure will be familiar to most of you, in his former role as Chief Executive of Whakakapi District. And he's here in his capacity as Chair of the panel. The panel, as you will know from our discussion of the Group Recovery Plan, is convened as an advisory group, reporting to myself, so that I can tap into expertise that exists in terms of how we might approach recovery. The extent of the authority, as previously discussed, is zero. They are purely an advisory panel. We convened it the first time as part of exercise Whakatau, and I'm delighted to say that the 12 members of the panel, voluntary members who I contacted, every one of them who I contacted was really enthusiastic and wanted to be part of it. Didn't have to twist anybody's arms. They said, yes, it's important, we want to be part of it. So that was really encouraging. And when we met, they also expressed an interest in having an ongoing role outside of an emergency event to help progress recovery. The group is quite large, probably too large to be really effective in an emergency. But I think there's a degree of self-selection as we go through, and the outside of an emergency, those who are interested will go off and do their usual day-to-day business. One of the things that happened is, following it and our subsequent meeting, they all sorts of opportunities for to enhance recovery, and Jim will talk a little bit more about those. One of the constraints, of course, is what resources we have to realise those opportunities. So hence the recommendation that we work through, develop a program, and then you can bring that back to you, and you can decide what level of resourcing you want to put into it. But until we've done that, we will obviously be working within the resources we've got. I'll just pass over to Jim as chair of the panel, and he can say a few words.
Thanks, Richard. Great to be with you today, and have really enjoyed the opportunity to support Richard in recovery planning, as have all of the members, as he mentioned, are really energised, and there's a wealth of experience there that, to be honest, the nation could do well to draw on. My observation, and I think the reality is that recovery planning is essential, but it's not prioritised. For major events as a country, we literally make it up as we go. We've had different arrangements following every major event, and they're almost decided on the chopper ride on the way in. That might be a little bit colloquial, but it's not much more than that, and there is no planning to how recovery has occurred in the past. We in Canterbury hold significant experience post our two major events, and there's a real opportunity to draw on that experience while it's still available to us, and we should do that. While recovery takes many years, the immediate recovery planning phase and those first year or two afterwards needs to occur before the event actually happens. And we've got enough experience now to know that. One of the critical issues is around the decision-making institutional arrangements that are in place locally, regionally, and nationally to support recovery activity. As a panel, we've been focused on the the biggest critical risk facing Canterbury, and that's an AFA. It's present, and as we know, it's a credible live scenario on which we think recovery planning could and should be based. To do that, though, that requires quite a lot of coordination and collaborative effort, not only across the South Island, but also with government agencies and ministers to think about how do we put in place potential recovery arrangements that give us a good idea heading into a major event. How are we going to work together, where decision making will occur? Now, we all know that that's not perfect and things change over time as governments and individuals do, but working with DPMC and ministers on institutional and decision making arrangements, we think is something which we could and should lead on behalf of the South Island. To do that, we would like to see us working with other South Island groups and possibly through Zone 5 and 6 as a way of trying to introduce this idea, is actually talk about how do we approach government and start thinking about and engaging genuinely, and it seems that DPMC is probably going to be the key lead in this space, is how do we actually take some of their decision-making frameworks that they've already started to put together, but they're rather in the abstract, whereas we think AF8 is actually a scenario that we know very well how it will unfold. So we're hoping today that to get a little bit of feedback from you, whether you think that's an idea that we should continue to work with Richard on, and any thoughts that you have. It's clear that there's a lot of energy that is available to be used in recovery planning, and I think that needs the support of all. As Richard said, there's a current lack of capacity effectively to advance recovery planning to the extent it needs to be, and I anticipate that he and James will come back to you later in the year as part of the budget bids and look about in what is obviously constrained times, what a responsible budget proposal looks like, and balancing the relative priorities from the chair of the Recovery Advisory Panel's perspective. We think investment in recovery planning is one thing that deserves some priority. So look, with that, I'll finish and appreciate any feedback, particularly on how we engage others to think of an advanced recovery planning. And without others on board, we can have the best recovery plan in place for Canterbury. But if it doesn't align well with that national view of the world, then it has a low chance of being effective. So anyway, look, with that, appreciate your time today. Thank you very much. So,
thanks, Richard and Jim, for those comments on your report. Any thoughts with your on this?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It sounds really exciting too, or not exciting, but actually to have this in place. But I was just wondering, when you were thinking, Jim, as far as the advisory panel goes and considering the recovery plans, it's easy to go straight to the AF8 situation, so large scale recovery. But I guess as communities, we have had impact of more localised events. Is the advisory group looking at almost two sets of plans, for a large scale event, but actually the flooding, the snow, the other situations that may affect, that might need a slightly bespoke set of plans to assist them with the recovery? Just keen to hear your thoughts on that.
I think you're absolutely right. There are different levels. I think the AF8 scenario is differs in that it requires multiple regions and central government to be working together much more. But certainly my focus over the last 3 years, and it will continue, is to build the capacity and support local smaller events. So yes, they both need to be done.
So are they happening in parallel?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, yes, but I think it's not, it's well done. It's good, well done. Maybe the house get its own part of the system still in there. Is
That'd be great. Thanks, Ben. Thank you, Dave.
Yes,
Thanks for the report. What stood out to me was raising the awareness of the work that's required in preparation for recovery and how much that can actually help in the recovery situations rather than everyone gets involved in the event that happens. And that event might last a day or two and the emergency might be around for a week or two, but the recovery takes years. And so thinking about how we coordinate and learn from one another, I think it's a good thing. And you talked about a conference style in here and some learning that could be done, and I think that's something that could be worth pursuing because it then lifts the profile of recovery around emergency. So it's sort of emergency focus, but it's not about how you do the 3 days by yourself to outcomes. It's everything else. So yeah, I would support looking at how we might do something like that. Yeah.
John?
And I guess in that conversation, I'm aware of the CDEM conferences we used to have in Wellington, and I'd be tapped on the shoulder and say, really appreciate you being here as a governor because we don't see the governors. So that kind of conversation between the officers and governments and getting a really good understanding right through, I think it is critically important. And if I'm sitting here, the honest point is, yeah, I know very little about recovery. And I suspect there's a whole bunch of folk that don't know a lot about recovery. We're all in the response phase.
Correct.
Responsible.
Well, what about you to respond with it?
Yeah, both comments, yes. Raising the profile and awareness is important, and the panel certainly supports the idea of a conference. Unfortunately, if we put that on Richard's shoulders at the moment, then that will become his sole focus. So being able to gain support for a national conference would be great. In the meantime, as you mentioned, John, trying to get ourselves on the agenda of relevant conferences, and it doesn't have to be civil defence. It can be any type of conference that's aligned to local government. Being able to talk about recovery and recovery planning is something that we should be doing.
this goes to say Richie and I have been talking about trying to either do a conference or some form of South Island workshopping. So we're not quite sure how to resource it and make it work yet, but we'll be working on trying to do that. And I think the other thing that's worth noting here is that the AF8 steering group have been looking at their strategic plan for the next 5 and then 10 years. And they want to see recovery become part of the AF8 agenda. So the intent being the sort of next 5 years, that might not work with our timeframes, but next 5 years trying to get some robust science behind recovery for an alcohol earthquake, like they did for the response phase. So there's some really robust science and understanding. And then, how do we use that science going forward? So that conference might not quite work with what we want to do, but it's going to work with what we want to do.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add a comment and reiterate what both Richard and Jim said. So as Kev Chair is sitting on that group, and I think it's an incredibly valuable group that's really well connected and has got really good experience. And I know the conversations that we've had around setting up a advisory panel, I've got full confidence that the people that are around that table are going to be able to provide that really great support to Richard and the team. And there's a real, as you can see from the work that's come through, there's a real opportunity to actually move that on to the next level with the support from around that table. And as you've heard from Jim, they're acutely aware of budgets and priorities and workloads, but I think it's a really, really positive resource to be able to support Richard and the team.
No further questions. Thanks, Jim, for chairing that
Thank you. This is clear.
You have a recommendation there that we received a report from the Recovery Advisory Panel. It notes the opportunities identified by the panel and agrees to remove property developed for consideration by the panelists. The mover and second stand. Second, John. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Next item is number 9. That one, that was the status report.
So stage reports here, lots of things being completed, which is good. Happy to take any questions on those. And the last one that's in orange, was the signing of the volume responsibilities, just reviewed, and looking at the works program is now green code. So well done. I feel good about that. Nothing anything over. Questions for James? The recommendation there. The previous resolutions provided in the CDEM committee resolution status report we received. Sam, Karen, was over, please say aye. Aye. Next item 9.2, page 54, the coordinating executive group report was it?
Will was away, and so they should all be stood for it. He's away. I know he's away. That's good. People in the same will, but we'll get to it.
It looked good to me when I read through it. So I think James, you put it together.
Sure. Yes. Look, I think there's one thing in particular that I'd like to highlight for you, and that's the evacuating planning procedure that the Keg endorsed me to sign off on. Not that I expect you to read it, that it's in those supplementary papers, but just be aware that we've done a lot of work in trying to create a standard way of us managing evacuation with pre-planned ones for us to pop up during floods and things across the whole of the region. So I just want to make you aware that new visa works there. And to be used, prior to and during an emergency. Perhaps also just highlighting the reports that were there. There was an annual public education engagement report. Through the annual survey that we do, we've saved get some data put together, and I will bring that to a joint committee so you can see sort of what the public think of us and how ready the public think they are for emergencies. And you will note there the Rural Advisory Group report from David Hewson. So David Hewson stood up as the chair after Chris Allen's passing, and he stayed on as chair, which has been a little tick out consistency there. And we're in the process of appointing a rural relationship advisor and a rural liaison officer to help support the rural sector during emergencies. Otherwise, I'll take any questions with support.
Questions? James, Will? There's a recommendation there that we received the report from the acting chair of civil defence. Mover? Yeah. Nigel been married. Motion all in favour, please say aye. Yeah. Next item 6.2, evacuation planning procedures. Tsunami blue zones. Yeah, see side this online.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's to you to take us through the report.
Helen, James here, Helen, be aware we haven't got videos, so we won't be able to see any slides. You just have to talk to them, sorry.
Right, that's fine, all good. So yeah, kia ora koutou. Sorry, I'm not with you today. I'm online. So I just wanted to give you a brief update on where we are at with the Tsunami Blue Zone transition. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but we are, and I'll sort of take it a little bit as read in the agenda. I don't have a lot more to say than what's actually in there. So it's more if you have questions. We are having to transition from our current red, orange, yellow tsunami evacuation zone approach to one public-facing blue tsunami evacuation zone. And that's as a result of new directors' guidelines that were issued in May. And so we have until December 2031 to make this transition, as like each territorial authority has until then to make the transition. We have discussed it with all the emergency management officers in the region, and we have decided that the best approach would be to do it all together as one region rather than each TA doing it at a separate time. So we're currently just putting together the project plan for the transition. We're just finalising that at the moment and aiming to make that change in late 2026. And that just gives us time to budget for the replacement, primarily for the replacement of information boards. There's quite a few of those up on our coastline at the moment, and they just take a bit of money to replace. So we need to factor that into the 26-27 budget, and also other printed material, and to develop a comms plan and to make any zone changes that are necessary. For Kaikoura, Huranui, Selwyn, Ashburton, Waimati, there will be no change to the zone boundaries. So the current red and orange zones will just be merged into one blue zone, and the messaging for that is long or strong, get gone. For Waimakariri, Christchurch and Timaru, and actually a little bit of Huranui, Leithfield, there are yellow zones, and we will be reviewing the zone boundaries for those for various reasons. So you may see some change, some minor changes to what the zones are or the zone boundaries look like. So I think that's all in terms of the blue zone transition. Are there any questions around that?
Thank you.
Yep, no, all good. And then the next item was just a quick update on the land information memorandum changes. So I also am not sure how much you are aware of these, but we thought it would just be useful to give you an update from a sort of regional perspective. So the local government natural hazards information and land information memoranda regulations 2025 were issued in April, and they come into effect in October. And that means that LIMs now need to have a natural hazard section in them, and there is specific information that needs to be included within those, within that natural hazard section, and specific ways that that needs to be set out. So we are currently working really closely with all the territorial authorities in the region to develop the required wording for that. It gets a little bit tricky because some of the wording is, sorry, was there a question? No? Yeah, some of the wording is our wording that the regional council has to provide to the territorial authorities for them to place on the LIMs as we provide it. Other wording will be territorial authority wording for the information that the territorial authorities hold. And so therefore that's up to each district to decide how they want to word that, but we're trying to encourage some regional consistency in the wording for LIMs. So we're just working through that at the moment, but we're on track for being able to meet those regulations in the middle of October. So any questions on that? all good. I will take silence as happiness, and that's all I have to tell you today.
Full major mayor of Christchurch.
Uh-huh.
To what extent do we feel the community are aware of the requirement to put natural hazards on limbs, and do we see that as an issue?
Yeah, so we are also talking about the comms approach to this. I guess our focus at the moment has just been on getting all the wording sorted and all the information required sorted, and we are working on the comms for this. I've been working with Rachel Wilson at Christchurch City Council. They're pretty onto it with the whole process for this, and looking at various comms tools, I suppose. So it may be worth following up with Rachel Wilson within the City Council as to what is required or what she has planned at your end. I don't know of any sort of national comms that are being done around this. This is being done all through Department of Internal Affairs, and I have not yet heard of any kind of national communications that are planned. But it is something we are going to be following up on to see if it is something we need to look at doing either regionally or sort of each district, because I think it is a fairly significant change to the limbs, and I know there has been sensitivity in the past around this information, so I think it is worth looking at some communications around this if it's not been done already.
Thank you. Hello, that's good questions here. So thanks very much for that before. And there's a recommendation. We received the report on the blue zones transition and change it to the limits. Move on a step at a time. Nigel Murray. No discussion. Put the motion will vote yes or no. It's carried. Item was 9.4, which would be the NEMA update.
So there is Mike Delui, who's presented to us previously, and introduced you to Katie McRae, who's one of the new REMAs with NEMA, Regional Emergency Management Voices, and is going to be our focal REMA for the Canterbury region.
Yep. Sorry about that, team. If I look a little bit distracted, it's just because as Helen was talking, we've got a magnitude 8 earthquake in Great Passage. But I look into the distracted on. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm here to introduce Katie. I'm here as the team leader, and Katie is a recent appointment to NEMA as a regional advisor. I will let Katie introduce herself, and I will step away.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Katie McRae, and proud to be your new REMA. So I come from Christchurch City Council, where I've been for the last 9 and a bit years. I was the engagement manager and the head of communications engagement there. So while I might have had the traditional trajectory into NEMA via sort of like military or police, my background is more in the communication space. I do have a reasonable understanding of the government. So looking forward to working with you.
Thanks, Katie, for the introduction. I've got a report there.
So take the report as read.
Okay.
Since the report was put through, we have progressed this slightly on the bill. So Cabinet has released papers indicating its policy proposals, 21 in total. And sort of in summary, the key points are around firming up who is responsible in an emergency, looking at just making through my notes just here, looking at how we can improve civil defence group plans, providing representation for iwi for rural communities and for communities in general when it comes to the coordinating executive groups, extending those teams for assurance, tools for assurance, and it's also including the utilities, lifeline utilities, and student services that I mentioned at the station. So the government does intend for this through during this term. There will be another opportunity for the community to have a say on the bill as part of the civic committee process.
Timeline going forward.
So timeline is expected. The bill is expected before the end of the government's term. They are looking to get it in. But I don't have anything more definitive than that at the moment. It is with our development of this to draft.
Just to add to that, understand that they hope to get it to select committee round about November. Good change.
So potentially submissions in the process prior to Christmas of select committee. So I'm just thinking of select committee and submission processes prior to Christmas, or whether it's expanded out, or what opportunity there is once it arrives.
We
don't know.
We don't.
Good. I'll just raise one thing. It's not on the report, but the Russian tsunami that did that, and it's commentary about it. The alerts that come on the cell phone, they started at 4:30 in the afternoon, finished at 2 o'clock on the morning. But did they call it a success or not?
Quite a little bit more update for you. Did do 2 alerts in total. One that was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and one that was in the morning at 6 o'clock. Some people received a number of alerts throughout the day, and we've done a little bit more investigation into why that would be. And it's a lot to do with often at night your phone will do a bit of a sort of like a system reset. And once your phone does that, it'll push through the alert again. So that is one of the reasons why people were getting them through the night. Another reason was that we only issued those alerts to coastal regions because it was a tsunami threat. So people who entered into a coastal area, no matter what time of day that they did, would have received that alert. And if they came back in and out, they also would have received that alert. So it's sort of like cold comfort, because obviously no one likes to receive multiple alerts, particularly late at night. But the system itself worked well. It's just the quirks of individual phones, how they update. There was a bit of concern too that some people didn't receive alerts at all. Again, it was partly because they were outside of the zone. For example, Hamilton didn't receive it at all, because obviously not a tsunami area. And if you were on the absolute border of where a cell phone tower was transmitting, and some people maybe in the house received it, some people didn't. NEMA likes to take a cautious approach to that, and will sort of like mark quite a wide area. So it depends on you're on the same network as the other people in the house, and also sort of like some proximity to that tower. But again, cold comfort when you're multiple alerts, never looking around.
Yeah, question from Stephen.
Thank you and welcome. This comes to some subject we talked about earlier around the costs, and what the legislation is expecting from local government, the extra costs that are going to be required to meet those standards, and this continued talk about rates capping and not being able to pay for the things that communities continue to need. What's the expectation around councils actually being able to afford what is going to be required?
Question for week 3. Well, there are going to be costs associated with that for local and for central government as well. So I did ask of the team back, the team with some sort of reports on this one. So I think NEMA is also looking at around, I think it's 11.8 million worth of implementation. Other central government agencies will also be looking to contribute sort of between 7 and 8 million as well. It's It's one of those things where, yes, there is cost involved, but we also get some reassurance with that sort of every dollar spent this side of emergency is worth about four in terms of recovered in terms of recovery and on the response phase. So money invested now is well worth it long run. And it will also come down to a certain extent around how people has to be implemented. And that's still the timing of that and the stage of implementation would mean a slower release of that requirement of funding. Anything to add, Brian?
Yeah, I think the total estimate is around $8 million over 5 years. There's been no decisions yet on what's going to be implemented and what phasing looks like, and that will become clearer over time. So I think it's pretty much a question of, watch this space. And I can absolutely understand where that question is coming from a sector that's squeezed everywhere. Yeah.
But not the reason.
No, they're not taking that.
If you've been told yes, they don't raise rates, then what's the expectation?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe core business, it is core.
Yeah. Yes,
Core business.
Yeah.
Debated one. No further questions. How do you like them? The recommendation that we received the NEMA updates. Move those things up. Yeah. Nigel Craig. All those in favour, please say aye. Very clear, you. Control of report for 9.5.
Thanks for holding said this read as well. I'll just highlight a couple of points. Russian tsunami that just raised previously. Just an idea that while that was occurring, we noticed that there was a gap in the NEMA usage into the top of rules and other. We know that's on the atmosphere area. So we did an additional one there, and it's just one of those things that the cell towers didn't quite overlap enough. And we'll NEMA to correct that. Nelson, Tasman, Marlborough flooding. Just a big thanks to all councils that helped support staff going up to Nelson, Tasman, and Marlborough. From across the region, a number of staff went up on up to 3 total. There was 3 separate issues for events, there's a huge amount of appreciation from the Nelson Tasman CDEM group for the support they've got. The Canterbury Assurance Framework is just a piece of work we've been doing around sort of self-assessing ourselves as to how well we're doing. It's progressed well. I think most councils have done that now. Just by seldom to follow up with really follow up with some parts of the area. And then we'll log back and show you what our self-assessment looks like. I've included a little bit there around the Canterbury Declaration standard operating procedures, particularly important for mayors. Seeing as we're about to go through those election processes, I'll bring that back to the first joint committee with an induction into the process.
It's attached there.
It's attached for information, yeah. And just note about all the correspondence, particularly in regards to Manawhera, to Ben Bateman, Chief Executive, Te Runanga Nosahu, plus results. It's resulted in a new person being appointed for the coordinating executive group, and some ongoing work will continue with the Runanga as to an appropriate appointee for the joint committee as we have our group plan. There's also we're just in the process of getting the letter with a range of ministers that you would have all seen around the lifestyle blocks. So I'm speaking with Neil to get his signature on it, and I'll send that on behalf of Neil and update you on any responses we get from the ministry.
Questions, Joe? The recommendation there that we received the report from the group controller. Steve and John, the second, all in favour, please say aye. Very good. We're moving over to the next from the chair. The report will be the chair. I also just like to recognise the effort put in for Tasman, the time of need. And also the leader was concerned to the about to receive the Minister, the Energy Minister for the last 3 blocks. So well done for that. In terms of reference, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm seeking that we make a recommendation by way of a secretarial note for an update of our terms of reference. At this point in time, mana whenua are represented within our group plan, but are not represented within our terms of reference as members of this committee. And with the changes that are happening around us, or despite the changes that are happening around us, we need to rectify that and have mana whenua are recognised in the terms of reference. There are other changes that probably need to be made over the next few months. References in the terms of reference are to the CDEM Act, sections 16 and 17 as to our functions and roles and obligations. Those will potentially change once the Act is given assent. So I'm just thinking staff may, over the next 3 or 4 months, as they take the opportunity to absolutely bring the mana whenua into the process, check upon the acronyms which are on the next page. There's a bunch of those that do not exist. I suspect some that will not exist once the bill comes through. So I'm just seeking your approval through that note to have staff work through an interim rewrite of the terms of reference and give consideration to what changes might need to be made as the bill comes in place. And I do that so that our first meeting in the next triennium, we may have something in front of us that we can agree to. It's not for us to ratify it, we can agree to it, but it will ultimately need to go to Environment Canterbury, this being a joint committee for ratification at that point. I just wait for that wee piece of work to begin now so that something's in place for the next triennium.
Do you put any recommendation on that or take it as an action?
Oliver, how would you suggest we proceed?
Happy for us to take as a secretary note. I have some wording drafted up already, but if the committee wants it to be more formalised in a resolution, then we can make that change.
What do you have written up?
I have the committee requested that the terms of reference for the committee be updated to include a mana whenua representative in our membership of the committee, noting that the Canterbury Regional Council holds overall responsibility for amending and adopting the committee's terms of reference.
And if we just note those other...
Shall we take a measure of the second? I think it's not.
Okay, well, also move.
John moved. Sam seconded. Any debate on it? All those opposed, please say aye. Carry. Start thinking, John. Just finishing off the chair's report, being with the last items on the agenda. Obviously, you all know this is my last meeting because I'm standing down. So I'm doing that, but just like to thank the staff, the mayors, all those who contribute to the CDEM over the last 3 years. It's been a good committee. We've achieved some stuff. We had one declaration with the 4 hills. Exciting, I don't know, but I shouldn't use the word exciting for a declaration. It was something new to me. So, and the way it was managed and got through was exceptional. It's a credit to more involved on how that did work and all the planning you've got going forward. It's all in place, and you've also gone and assisted others in other regions where the need was as well, which also was like training really. So it gets you ready for when we need it. So it's a farewell from me. Some of you are on your performance reviews, but I think you'll possibly all be back. Mari, guaranteed to be back. Well done. Yeah, so just me signing off the chair's report that my last meeting I've enjoyed and being here and meeting lots of new people as well. So got a
Mr. Chairman, we'll take thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take this opportunity on behalf of this forum and committee, the mayors and staff, to thank you for the leadership that you have shown us over the last 3 years, and previously as a mayor within this committee. We have achieved a lot. We are well engaged as a group, both locally with our TAs, really just growing and working there and building. And that all comes from leadership at the top, and equally engagement with national government or central government and working through roadmaps and the bill and those conversations. So I just really want to say, on behalf of the committee and the rest of the wider community, thank you for your input over that time. I know you got a bridge out of it, but thank you for the time and contribution that you have put in the way you've worked as a committee. Thank you.
Thanks for those words, John. And I don't do it on my own. I've direct support from around the table here. And James, you do all the hard work, we do the easy bit. So very good. So I'll move that we receive the report from the chair. We second that. Sam, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Next items is the next meeting, and the next meeting will be the 27th of November. And we're not sure, James, who will be around the table, but we're guaranteed to be someone here. Yeah. So next item is the closing Karakia. Let's start with that short closing Karakia for us today. Una here to poll, kia waitia, ākua waitia. Everyone. Be good to declare the meeting closed.